And while we're talking about Desmond, I'll just throw a couple of these at you. Desmond, this is from Davey. Desmond should be ashamed of himself after those comments about one of the most decorated managers in our history. Happy to see a change, though. Rodgers lost the dressing room. Mike says, the statement from Desmond was embarrassing. He's a non-executive director and should not be making statements on behalf of the PLC. He has shown Nicholson to be the puppet he is.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think it's been pretty unedifying, the whole process. I think I'm not particularly surprised that it's come to this point, but the way it's escalated and ended was kind of shocking, really. I think there's been a clear kind of a slow breakdown of relations behind the scenes at Celtic. I think you go back to even towards the tail end of last year, getting into the summer. I think Brendan lost faith in a lot of the recruitment, and I think Brendan Rodgers, I think, he can be high maintenance. He can be demanding. I don't think he's probably the easiest manager to deal with, but that's what you get when you get an elite manager. They set high demands. They expect the best. If you don't get them, they can make life a little bit awkward. I think Celtic's gradually, the relationship between obviously Dermot Desmond and Rodgers has been eroded gradually, then spectacularly. I think over the summer it got worse and worse, and then at this point in time, I think after the kind of whole transfer window and the final days of it, the shambles, the comments from Rodgers at the end of it, the kind of behind the scenes backstabbing briefings, at that point a separation was inevitable. It was a case of when. I think at that point Rodgers was adamant he wanted to see out the season. I think that was his plan, just to dig in and just see out the season. I think it was getting, obviously, but it started to affect everything at the club, from top to bottom and on the pitch. So I also think if the statement came out Monday night saying they'd been a partner in the ways and that was it, the first statement, I think a lot of people might have thought, you know what, I think it was maybe the right time. Things had gone a bit stale, wasn't working, the relationships are broken down. It's best to nip it in the bud now and wish everybody the best. I think at that point, I don't think Brendan Rodgers' reputation would have been too damaged at that point. I think he had 2 great seasons, wasn't working. Wish him all the best. He'd done his best and it wasn't working. I think that's what happens in football. I think the follow-up statement from Dermot Desmond was completely unnecessary. Even if he believes it and thinks that, I don't think it was necessary to air the dirty linen in public and eviscerate a guy in public. I think it was uncalled for. A few contradictions in there as well. Things about spending every penny and one man be bigger than the club. Come on, all that stuff. I don't think Rodgers was sabotaging himself. There's no benefit of doing that. He wanted to leave he wanted to do his 3 years, leave on horseback into the sunset, go back in 10 years with a lounge named after him. That's what he wanted, not this. This is not what his vision when he come back. So I say it's a bit unedifying. It doesn't put the club in a great light, does it? You're watching the kind of news footage, the sports news channels last night, and people with disbelief, because this is not how clubs tend to end. Regardless how badly a relationship breaks down, this is not the kind of done thing to eviscerate a guy in public. A guy who has the second most successful manager in the club's history, who's provided such highs through the years. I think he deserved better, to be perfectly honest with you. I say, regardless of how things have gone behind the scenes, I think he deserved better than that. And I don't have a piece today. If you're a kind of potential manager, I know managers will do pretty much anything to get a job, but if you're looking at that, you think, that's a guy who's won 11 trophies out of 13 and gets filleted in public when the way out.
Yeah.
Maybe make a few think twice. I don't know. Perhaps not, because managers will take jobs and think they're going to be infallible anyway, so maybe not. But it's just the whole thing has been far messier than it had to be, I think.
Yeah, listen, that wasn't it was it's a character assassination.
Aye. Yeah.
It wasn't so much of a statement as a gangland hit. And how we understand the kind of thinking behind it. The thinking behind it is that, if we can blame everything here on Brendan, blame it all on Brendan, then maybe the fans will back off and everybody can get back on board. And I think he's completely misread the room with it. I think it was brutal in nature. It was vicious in its delivery. It was also crass and vulgar, jaw-droppingly unprofessional. And as I said, I really do think it points to the structural sort of issues that have brought the fans, to onto the cobbles, so to speak, in terms of this rebellion, this ongoing rebellion against the club. I think it could backfire spectacularly on Dermot Desmond, because I can see the sort of militant element of the Celtic support um, reacting more angrily to this development than they were in the first issue. And I think Mick's right. They might not have necessarily come rushing out to defend Brendan Rodgers if a decision has been taken, but it's the manner in which this has been taken. And it's
Yeah.
starting to feel as if Dermot Desmond has no respect for the club or for protocol or for even good corporate governance. And he's using Celtic like a plaything right now. And I think that's insulting to the supporters. And I can see this not playing the way that he thought it would. I think he's misread the room. I think if he was thinking by doing this, by taking Brendan Rodgers off at the knees, then that corrects everything. I strongly suspect it will go a different way. And I'll also be really interested to hear when, and I'm guessing that Brendan Rodgers, I think the kind of way that is usually done these days, it will be a statement that will come out through the LMA in England. And it'll be carefully legaled and vetted, because there's all sorts of possible ramifications for what just went on last night. But I think it'll be really interesting and instructive as to what exactly did go on. Because listen, I've got information and I'm very confident in it. Late yesterday evening, Brendan Rodgers was still behaving like the manager of Celtic, and was given no indication. He was taking and receiving text messages from people, and there was no indication in any of these conversations that he was actually, while he was pinging the phone with one finger or one hand, he was writing a resignation letter with the other.
And
So
sorry to jump in,
Yeah.
something smells off about the whole thing. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Martin O'Neill said he was approaching the afternoon as well. It's worth throwing in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So moves were I thought. I mean, it feels like, I mean, it's phraseology that is Kennedy's resignation, but it feels more like constructive dismissal or deconstructive dismissal.
Yeah, that's
Really,
exactly it,
because
Mike.
it gets to a point where it's so broken that it has to be a part of the ways. It'd be interesting to see next year accounts if there's a payout to the manager, because if he's resigned, he won't get a payout. That'd be tucked in there somewhere, so that'd be interesting. But yeah,
But how
so
can
you got
Dermot Desmond? How can you come from that position where, listen, let me tell you something. That statement wasn't rattled up in just 5 minutes.
Yeah.
The way that my 1,000-word spread had to be last night. that a lot of time and effort and care and precision had gone into the exact detailed wording of that statement.
It was really clever,
And
actually, the statement, because you're talking about
but
things that
Mick,
have
what I'm
been
saying is,
litigious.
if he's done this in advance, then on what basis are you waiting for Brendan Rodgers to actually tender a resignation? Don't be ridiculous. If that's how strongly you feel about the guy, then it's not a resignation issue. This is you deciding that this guy isn't fit for your football club.
Yeah.
And, why on earth would you wait for Brendan Rodgers to decide that he'll leave on his terms? That's not what happened yesterday. And it's insulting people's intelligence to suggest anything otherwise than that, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I mean, I thought some of it's quite cleverly worded. Things like they expressed that they were keen to discuss a new contract. Roger said, "I've not been offered a new contract." Well, both
Both
comments
can
are
be
true.
true.
Both can be true. Things like Brendan Rodgers authorised all signings and departures. That could also be true. It doesn't mean he rates these guys, but things like Adamida, can we sell him? Yes, if we get a replacement, didn't get a replacement. So he did authorise the sale, didn't get a replacement. Just clearly, I actually don't think Brendan Rodgers' public comments were that harsh against the club. I think some fans thought he didn't go far enough with his criticism of the
Yeah,
board.
he was actually accused by some of trying to protect him, Mick.
He said at one point, Mick, that the board bleed Celtic. He kind of stuck up for him.
Listen, I mean, Chris Mackay's out dishing out soup on Christmas Day and all that stuff. I mean, it was quite. I mean, it was. I thought it could be more. Listen to the guy who's got 800 plus games as a manager, been all around the place at top level. He speaks. I mean, out when he feels he needs to. I don't think he was. I mean, I think the feeling is from Dermot Desmond. Well, you know it is now from the statement that Rodgers has put a bullseye in their back with his comments, that he's passed the buck on to them for the failure of the transfer window.